All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over the PowerPoint presentations for Murox, ASP.NET with C# 2015 6th edition. And we're coming towards the end of Chapter 7. I've been bopping back and forth between looking at what is in the PowerPoint slides here and what exists when I'm creating a very simple little project. Okay, so jumping back into here, one thing I did not show you before was when we talked about the validation summary, there are different things that you can set for it. So let's take a look at those. There is the display mode, which specifies how the error messages are to be displayed. The default is a bullet list. That's what you saw. You can also say list or single paragraph. So let's change it, and just so you can see some of this stuff in action. All right. So we've got here display equal dynamic, but display mode. Let's set that equal to list instead of bulleted, bulleted list. Whoops. I'm not sure if I made a mistake, you're going to know very quickly. Oh, that was on the wrong one. Sorry. I want that set for my validation summary here. Okay. All right, let's see if that looks any different than it did before. I think just what's going to happen is the bullets are going to go away, and that's what happened. Okay, so that's another way to do it. And the last way of doing it, according to what the author says here, is to go and set the display mode to single paragraph, one word with a big S and a big P. All right, so again, setting that to single paragraph right there. So let's save, try to run it again. Hopefully I didn't misspell anything. Okay, so you can see what happens. I don't like that one at all. All right, although we probably could take that paragraph and make some modifications to it. I don't care. All right. I like the bulleted list myself if you're going to use this. You may or may not agree with that. Okay, so let's jump back here. And let's not set the display mode. Okay, we'll totally leave it off. And remember, if we leave it off, that what should happen here is it should go back to a bulletized list. Let's verify that. And it does. Good. Okay, so that's the first thing. The next is the header text. That's the text that's displayed before the list of error messages. So let's do that. Again, I'm trying to show you this stuff because to me, this is some of the more important stuff that we have to go over with this. The stuff that you're going to use fairly often in here. So I'm going to say here, header text equal, please note the following errors. And we'll put in a BR tag. Oops, a BR tag afterwards too. All right, let's see if that works. Again, if I'm making any mistakes in here, I'll go back and try to fix them, but we'll see. So please note the following errors. Okay. All right, we've got show summary, which is a Boolean value that determines whether the validation summary is displayed on the web page, with that being true by default, and show message box. That's a Boolean that determines whether the validation summary is displayed in a message box. Just for completeness, again, let's set the show message box property here to true. All right. So now when we run this, we should not see the stuff in here. Instead, it should be in a message box that comes up over here. There it is. Now notice that since we used a message box, it didn't like the BR tag. I don't know if we did that, if it would take, it still shows it like this too. Okay. We probably could have changed that to a \n if we wanted to, but it doesn't matter. It really isn't that big of a deal. Now, what I wanted to show you in here, and I don't remember how this is done, and that's the problem. All right, it says the validation summary control lets you summarize all the errors on the page. The summary can be a simple text like there were errors on the page, or a more elaborate message. Figure 710 shows how to use the validation summary control. To display different messages, you set the error message to the message you want in the summary control and the text property to the message you want in the validator. What? Well, let's show this. To me, this is what I'm trying to show you right now is the easiest way is to just show you this stuff. All right? So, let's go up, and again, we'll start this by going to our first required field validator, which is right here. So, we want to set the error message property right now. For text, we want to change that and put in an asterisk. All right, why? Let's look. I'm hoping this is now going to work. See that? We still get the messages here, but typically what you want here is, I'm going to come in here, this is great. All right, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change for each and every one of those. All right, which is kind of a pain because we've got a few of these, but there's my first one. There's my second one. So again, I'm going to go over to text. There's my next one. If there's a faster way of doing this, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to go over all of these. And I'm also, again, for completeness sake, I'm going to come up to the top here, and at the beginning of my form, all right, right before I've got these blank lines, I'm going to put an H1 header in here that says simple validation form, okay? Then underneath that, I'm going to put an H2 that says all fields required. All fields are required. Okay, then I'm going to put an H4 underneath that. An H4, and I'm going to say fields with a red asterisk indicate errors. And we'll put another H4, and we'll say said errors shown in validation summary at bottom of form. And let's change this. We'll make this one an H3. And I think when we change that one, the other one will change automatically, and it did. All right, so save. Let's run this. That may look kind of ugly the way I've got it, but notice now when I do this, okay, I get the asterisks, and there are my messages. Now this was a required field, so as soon as I put in Jeff Scott there, and I click submit, that error goes away. Password, hello. Now when I click, I get the other error because it's required and, so there's two errors, so I'm showing you that. All right. Re-enter password is required and the passwords must match. So it's showing both errors. That's a validation summary. As soon as I put in hello, both those errors go away. Salary, if it's out of range, sorry. If the salary is out of range, I get that message. Once it's within range, that goes away. Whoop, that's right, it had to be 50,000. That goes away. Why didn't that go away? Huh. Oh, because I put it in the phone number. All right. Now, invalid or missing phone number. So I need 555-555-5444. That's fine. And social security number 111223333. Let's leave a 3 off. Do we get bad format? Yes, we do. Invalid or missing. 3. Boom. Everything worked. So what I think I've done is I think I've done a fairly good, or at least fairly consistent job of showing you, first, required field validator, second, compare validator, third, range validator, fourth, regular expression validator. I skipped 5, the custom validator, and I did show you 6, which again is the validation summary. All right, so hopefully you found that worth your time and it was pretty complete. All right, so here's the ASPX code that they show on page 265 that shows you that. Okay? All right, and how their messages appear. Yeah, we can have it appear at the top or the bottom, etc. Okay. Validation groups. This is an interesting one. Do they show the example here? Yes, they do. This is not a good example, but this is a better example. All right, I could put everything, all my contact information, my billing address information, I could put this into a validation group. All right, and I could put the shipping stuff into a validation group. A good reason for doing that is if I have a check box here that says same as billing address, I'm not making the user fill it out twice. So as soon as you check that, I can either fill it in or just manually copy the information from here to here. Okay? Let's jump back a few slides. So we were here. So a validation group is a group of validators that are run when a page is posted. To group validators, you set the validation group property for each validator. So I could have taken and made a validation group. So I could have grouped together the salary, meaning the required, and the range, for example. I'm not going to go back and do that. You can also use C# code to do the validation for a group. Any validators that don't specify the validation group property are part of the default group, which basically all runs at once at the end. All right. So here's an example, and again, that's shown from page 267 in your text. The last 6 pages or so of the chapter go over this checkout page that uses validation controls. Now, this should be a lot of review for you by this time. It really and truly should. You should be able to create that page if you've read everything, set up the associated validation controls, and set up the validation summary. So the web form is mentioned on the bottom of 269, has a validation summary control that they put at the top that doesn't show unless the validators detect errors. And there are several validation controls in here. When the user clicks on the checkbox that indicates whether the shipping address is the same as the billing address, the page is posted to the server, and the text boxes and validators in shipping are either enabled or disabled. All right? So we're creating, we're grabbing. The only thing I didn't really go over in much depth and breadth of coverage that's in this section are the validation groups. And you could do this example without using the validation groups. All right? So the code for the checkout page is shown on page 271. This is the ASPX code. Remember, this is not C# code. This is basically the mocked up or, etc. HTML code that has both our client controls in there and our server controls in there. Remember, our server controls start with ASP:. All right, so there's our validation summary. There's our required field. I don't think it pays to go into these, all right, because we've talked about this stuff already. There's the validation expression, etc. There's the control to validate, all the other stuff. They're showing you yet another way of doing what I just showed you how to do. All right? So if you jump up to pages 272 and 273, especially 273, you get the associated C# code. And it says some of the code in the code behind file. So the author shows you virtually all of it on page 273. Everybody learns in different ways. Most people in some way or other are visual learners. To me, if you are struggling with this stuff at all, it is in your best interest to key this stuff in, not just copy it or bring it up. Because if you do that, all you're doing is you're looking at someone else's code. But when you copy it in yourself, there's a good chance you're going to make some mistakes. Look at that as being a good thing, because then you're taking control, and in a way, it's becoming your code. All right, the get customer data method that I think is probably on the next page. No, that's the load customer data method. There, that get customer data method, not only does it get the data for the contact information and the billing address, but it also gets the data for the shipping address. All right? If we look at the rest of it, this loads the customer data. So it says if you've got a customer, in other words, if it's not null, this is copying everything that you just created into the text boxes. So it might be grabbing it from a database or whatever. All right. This says start up a session if it's not been posted back and call load customer data. And get customer data, which will basically allow you to check out. Here we're doing the check to see if the billing address is the same as the shipping address. And if it is, we're just doing a bunch of copies. All right. That's pretty much it for Chapter 7. Again, I may have skipped some, but I didn't try to. All right. Next, I'm going to come back with Chapter 8. So I will come back with that in a minute. And in Chapter 8, change around a little bit. We're going to talk about how to work with session state, cookies, and URL encoding. And I will be back with that presentation in just a couple minutes.